to the Ross Patterson Revolution! Brought to you by GhostBed.com!
Yes, welcome to Ross Patterson Revolution. Jessie Wiseman isn't here today because she might be dead. She might have the coronavirus, which would not be shocking considering all the homelessness we've seen in Los Angeles. And you know she loves to play with homeless people in her spare time. Today we have special guest Matt Bilinsky, who is a purveyor of taste in Hollywood, if you will. You kind of know all the inside shit that's going on here.
Yeah, I've got my arms wrapped around a lot around Los Angeles.
Why is that? Just because you enjoy it? What do you do for a living?
I'm an attorney first and foremost, but I'm also pretty involved in the startup world, which is actually, believe it or not, pretty thriving in LA. You know, investor advisor, and that kind of creeps into internet shit talker. Started doing some content, so you know, do a little media, do a little startup, do a little law, and I don't know. Born and raised here. Have always been gratuitously, over networked, and for better, I appreciate the old school Hollywood stuff, but I also kind of, know the city is shifting, and
well,
I've been able to
shitty.
move. I'm finding some warts, man. About 17 years in here in my adult life, I'm like, oh god. So I've just made sure to look under every nook and cranny in town and see what's up.
Yeah, when I was moving out of here, Silicon Beach is what they were calling it as far as like the tech world goes. Down there. Is that where everything is going on tech-wise still? Kind of in that, like, south of Marina Del Rey and all that shit?
Primarily, yeah. I'd say, late, by 2009, 2010, San Francisco had always been, everyone assumed anything tech, in the tech world on the West Coast was going on in San Francisco. But there's a lot of smart people in LA, believe it or not. They're just not always the loudest people. So some of them started gravitating towards the tech world. It did start springing up in Venice primarily. And then a couple, and MySpace was the first LA. It was considered the LA tech company, but it was very evident of LA's tech that MySpace ended up failing because the engineering was bad.
Right.
So it was like, okay, LA just doesn't have the engineers and the technical know-how to compete with Silicon Valley. But that slowly but surely, evolved over the past 10 years as a lot of young, smart people who otherwise would have gone into the entertainment, traditional film and television industry. Like, nah, I want to go, chase the pot of gold in the tech world. And so it's still mostly in Venice and that area. And then some of the bigger tech companies that were coming down here because they shifted a lot to video, they found space in Marina Del Rey. But as it just the tech world in LA outgrew that area because it's still gentrifying, you actually have a lot right around here that they moved to some of the revitalization of East Hollywood. And, Viacom opened up a big office here. Noya House is kind of tech oriented. And a lot of the startups that scaled a bit and needed some more space gravitated towards East Hollywood a bit.
Now, you mentioned MySpace. I assume they failed because Tom never changed his profile picture.
No, that was the first domino to fall with that. They're like, listen, we got to see this guy stuck in 2003. What is this, still Friendster? I mean, who even knows? We needed to see some leadership comes from the top, right? So we needed to see Tom, expand his interests a little bit
and stop giving a thumbs up. More importantly, dude, have you been to MySpace recently? It's like a fucking graveyard for like EDM. Where you go there and there's still a lot of Daft Punk on people's homepages and shit. Like, I popped it open just to see what the whole sitch was like.
Sure.
It feels like some creepy horror film of like an old tech world where you're like, oh, there's kind of a few words scrawled out of like, oh, I had to drink too much cranberry juice last night to get rid of that. And you're like, all right, cool, man. People used to say whatever they wanted on there. You had a catchy song that started off your page, and then it all went to shit. I know Justin Timberlake bought a part of it and tried to convert it into a music platform, and that failed miserably.
Yeah. So after, the story with MySpace is more or less this. They sold early. They sold to Fox, and the history of big media companies buying tech companies. So that the M&A track record is not pretty. It usually doesn't work, but it could have worked. But what seemed to fail MySpace is that, and it turns out they did build it on bad tech. So you remember, I don't know if you remember, 2005, people start screwing around with their page, making it look all pretty. Everyone's like, this is great, this is cool.
Yeah.
By 2007, they had layered so much garbage on top of the tech, it took 4 minutes for a page to load. right?
Yeah, there was like rape clown images and shit that would pop up.
Yeah.
That was very Pennywise.
Spammed. It got spammed.
Yeah.
Between spam and the underlying tech not being able to support all the design and creativity on the pages, it became a bad user experience. And Facebook, for better or for worse, they took a slower approach, which everyone forgets. They were getting criticized. They're like, because they were keeping it to, one, verified identities, and two, they slow rolled it from college students only, and then opened it up slowly but surely, so everyone had to verify email addresses, and it turned out to be the right strategy. The tortoise beat the hare, and MySpace, it put MySpace in an early graveyard. Then a few attempts to reboot it, saying, hey, we've got all this user data, we've got a cool, we still have a name that has some visibility, and just whoever I've seen tech turnarounds and platform turnarounds, but MySpace just wasn't it. And I'm sure Timberlake said, I'm going to go put 25 hours a week into this thing, and then when it started up, he's got all these other things. He only got 24 hours in the day.
Right.
Timberlake's not going to put that much time towards his MySpace
Whenever I see fucking celebrities go into all of like 90 business ventures, like Kevin Hart.
Sure.
Look, I love Kevin Hart, and I actually owe the world to him. He was the one who convinced me personally to start writing.
Awesome.
And he's an inspirational guy, and he's amazing. The problem is when I see him now, and I was watching his Netflix documentary that aired maybe about 6 months ago. When you see somebody doing a million things, they can only give that maybe 1 hour of time a week. So you've got to have a huge machine behind you to make all this content and make it go. And you're like, man, how much time can you really fucking put into this shit? Same with Justin Timberlake. When I saw that he had, I want to say it was maybe $3 or $4 million he put into MySpace and was going to be like their new,
Sure.
brand
Also could have been
manager, whatever the fuck it is.
A fund that wanted to put Justin Timberlake's name on it, was actually financing it, and said, hey, we'll filter this investment through Timberlake. You don't have to put your own
Is that
money
what
in
it was?
I'm 99% sure. It happens
I
all the
fucking
time.
knew it.
Yeah.
But when you see that, you're like, all right, sweet. What's he going to show up for one meeting a week? Maybe through Skype or,
Totally. And it's something that I deal with a lot. One area that I work on a lot in my law career is influencer celebrity backed merchandise lines. And you see some, the Kylie Cosmetics of the world, or another client of mine, Chris Pfaff, you might be familiar with Young and Reckless, that spun off of Rob Dyrdek's show Fantasy Factor on MTV.
Yeah.
You got some successes like that. And when you think about it, every time someone matches a well-known celebrity who has a following with a product that makes any sense at all, if the product doesn't make sense, that's one thing. But if the product makes sense, you're thinking, all right, this person goes and pushes it, you're going to start, seeing dollar signs everywhere. And a lot of them succeed, but a lot of them don't. And one of the, when I'm trying to counsel these clients on, you can say, is this person ready to dedicate themselves for 2-3 years to making this work?
Right.
Or is this going to be a side project where they post a couple times for over a couple months, expect all, and then expect someone to come and buy them for $50 million. And that's it. At some point, it's just a matter of, can this person put enough time, like pure elbow grease, into this project? And if they do, this will succeed. And if they don't, it will not.
It's the same way in the podcast world, because, look, Dan and I own a media company. We got about 8 shows underneath our shingle right now. And it's one of those things where we've met with, 50 other fucking podcast hosts or people who potentially want a podcast, but they don't want to put the time into it.
Sure.
Of what it takes, because like it or not, it is a craft. You have to be consistent. You can't miss. And everybody typically has an excuse for something of like, oh, well, I had this thing with my grandmother and she's, bicycling to
Fucking grandmas.
whatever the fuck it is, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, I can't hear the rest of your sentence. I just check out. It's just a bunch of words at the end after that. Like, if it's something you really want to do, you'll fucking do it. Same with merchandising and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the issue is people's laziness to it. And there's a lot of things that, can't correct that no matter what you do.
Absolutely.
Who's one of your most successful clients that would be a great model for somebody out there?
A guy named David Dobrik, who's just tearing it up, a young guy who's a content creator right now. And, if
Does he have a podcast?
He doesn't have a podcast directly. Well,
Views?
he goes a lot. He goes on a lot with another client of mine named Jason Nash, who has a very successful podcast. And Jason and David are known. They're known as a tandem. but Jason's more of the audio guy. But these are guys who, David, you've got all these Instagram influencers who a lot of them, it got crowded in the, let's call it 3 to 7 million follower range. But then David really hit, escape velocity, and he's the A+ list right now. And the guy just pumps out content. His relationship with his fans is just preternatural, natural. And he loves
got a
making
big
content.
YouTube following too, right?
Massive.
Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
It covers 2 channels. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And Jason does great. He's also in that that upper echelon and does great work in the audio world. And David's a younger guy. Jason's a little bit older. Depending on David's content for some listeners may be a little youth oriented, but the under 27s love him. And those are guys who are really doing a great job in the content world right now.
Gotcha. And what do you do for him exactly? Are you an entertainment lawyer?
That becomes a gray area in this day and age because I do focus a lot more on the businesses built off these people. So sure, if they've got a brand deal coming in and hey, I'm going to go do well, it used to be a lot of travel stuff. Could be the Coachella and the Super Bowl event and whatnot,
right.
And the brand's going to pay you, X amount of dollars and fly you out and do content. Now it's obviously more remote stuff, but I'll do brand deals if they are doing more, some script. On the off chance they do some scripted content, which is not often these days, and why do it?
Nothing is, man. I mean,
yeah.
In the world of COVID, especially in LA, we keep trying to tell the audience this: like everything is shut down. You're not going to see your favorite shows on Netflix and Hulu and shit for a while.
Oh, there was a bunch of great data released from Netflix in their earnings report last week, and it was something like their free cash flow went from maybe like negative from over year to year, went like negative 800 million to positive 800 million.
Yeah.
You want to know why? Because they're spending a lot of money making content.
Yeah.
Not a little money, a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so obviously that was still a net plus for them, that they want to build up this and that's the thing that's been going on in Hollywood the last 4 or 5 years, that you have these streaming services that need to, the famous line is from from a Netflix executive, is like, this is 6-7 years ago, we need to become HBO before HBO becomes us. And that obviously means HBO's got all the content, but they don't have the distribution. We have all the distribution, but we don't have any content. So once the HBOs and the studios realize, wait a second, we're giving Netflix these great deals, which they were, and letting Netflix build this big business off them, they're going to go do their own thing and create their own streaming services. So by the time they do that, we need to have our own library. We have to go make up for 70 years of not producing content. So that's what they've been doing.
Yeah.
They have, none of these loans come due till about 2027. They have massive loans for production, and and they're producing all over the world. So
It's
they've been
into
building
the billions of dollars.
tens of billions.
Yeah.
It has been an arms race between Netflix, Apple, Hulu, Amazon, and it's been, if you're a content creator, a writer, producer, actor, it's been a good time the last few years if you're willing to do more projects that you're not going to get the $20 million payday anymore,
right.
But you can do a lot of projects and be in high demand. And that's what's been happening the last few years.
Yeah, and to your point about being 7 years behind, that's what I feel is happening with Amazon, Apple TV, even Hulu to a certain extent, where Hulu it used to be just like, hey, it's old reruns of shows. Congratulations, you can watch it for free, and
sure.
We might have the occasional independent film on here. There's going to be a few commercials, and that's it. Now they're doing original programming. Obviously, the Handmaid's Tale was fucking huge for those guys.
Yeah.
But then it seemed like to me they kind of ran out of cool original shit, and then they got saved by FX, where Dave was on there. So you take Dave for FX. That was the highest rated comedy in the history of FX this year, which is great. It's my favorite show.
It's great. They're terrific.
It was about 4.8 million average viewers per episode. Only 200,000 of them, 212,000 to be exact, were watching on FX. All the rest of them were watching on Hulu, and they were like, oh, shit. How far do you think into the future it is that FX will be bought out by Hulu or somebody else? I know Disney owns them now, but what happens to the TV studio side of it, I wonder?
Yeah, it could. People have been predicting that death for a while now. I think people forget that big companies move a lot slower than than reason would dictate, right? So
Apple being one of them.
Absolutely.
They should have bought Netflix years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because right now they're trying to do original content and it all fucking sucks.
The original people think doing content is easier than it is.
It is
and
not.
It was Netflix. First of all, I don't personally gravitate towards much, if any, original content on Netflix. But hey, I'm not the only person they're trying to get to watch, so it's clearly resonating. And Netflix has done a phenomenal job. Imperfect but phenomenal. And some of these other companies have realized, like, hey, we even going and poaching executives from the traditional media world, just going and inserting them and writing them a big check doesn't necessarily doesn't necessarily equal magic.
Right.
So it's very difficult. The cable channel. Okay, so in law school, I had a professor named Ken Ziffrin. Ken Ziffrin he's the guy. You want to talk about? He's every big television deal that you heard about, over the past 30 years, he did. I mean, he would tell me about the negotiations between the NFL and Fox. When Fox poached the NFL in 92 or 93 from CBS, and he remembers when sitting at the table with Jerry Jones, and when Fox pushed the dollar figure on the offer across the table, he was like, Jerry Jones nearly levitated.
Yeah.
So, like, he's seen all this shit. And he would just tell us about how, look at the finances of these cable stations. They're cash cows because they're making both advertising dollars and subscription fees. Okay. And it's just the margins are insane. But that's been slowly corroded. And
look, today in Hollywood Reporter, I think it was, they were saying that the death of cable TV.
Yeah. Had that one teed up. Haven't read that entire piece yet, but that looks super interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was reading it this morning, and the numbers are garbage, and they have been for a while.
Yeah.
Like, I remember pitching Adult Swim a show maybe 7 or 8 months ago, and they were like, "Look, if you get 300,000 viewers, it's a hit." And I was like, "I'm sorry," because this show has got 5 times that in one fucking day than that on Adult Swim.
Absolutely.
What's the reasoning to go there anymore? What's the reasoning to go to cable anymore? It's financially,
sure.
When you can get on a podcast and do whatever the fuck you want.
It's just
that's what I'm struggling with these days.
It's a lot of consumer habits from people who are older, and they don't. You've still got generations of people that do not naturally gravitate to the internet or podcasts or anything, and they're still making. I mean, from what I've gathered, they're still making CSIs. They're still making money off CSIs.
They are. Look,
yeah,
those primetime shows, because I don't consider them cable, by the way. Anything within the big four. I think that shit will always have an audience where it's like, hey man, Hawaii Five-0 has been on for 80 years on
sure.
Friday night, right? I've not seen an episode beyond the pilot, but I do know it exists. I look at the ratings and I see the numbers are great, and congratulations. Blue Bloods. That fucking show's been on for 90 years, and it's, congratulations. That's awesome. And
sure.
my parents love it. But I don't watch that shit, but there is an older audience that I think that primetime network will probably live for another 10 to 15 years before that gets phased out. But the cable networks like FX, MTV, VH1, Comedy Central, what do you do with Comedy Central now? I mean, they've tried to get in a podcast. They've tried to do clips online. They were one of the very first studios that signed on with Spotify
sure.
to show like 10, 15-minute videos. It started with clips from The Daily Show and shit like that, and kind of evolved, and then it kind of imploded after that. Yeah. Rogan is the one that's pulling them out of that, and they're going to do video again. But what do these cable networks do? Because they're just not drawing any ratings whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange. The cable business is in some the whole supports the sum. It supports each piece of the sum, right? And that people you're paying for a package, right? And so for years now, they'd say ESPN is keeping 30 different cable channels in business just because the subscriber fees for ESPN are so high. It's being amortized across the rest of the cable package, and people keep on buying cable, and all these other stations that nobody fucking watches keep on getting people keep on buying the packages involving them because of ESPN.
Well, it's still live sports. And I think that's the difference between that and any other scripted show, right?
Without a doubt.
I still have cable. I haven't cut the cord.
Same.
The only reason is because of live sports, where it is simply easier to go from channel to channel to channel, find the sports that I want to watch live, as opposed to going to 90 different apps on my Roku.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another company that I was pretty involved in was a very successful streaming service called Pluto TV. It was bought by, if you want to talk about one of the few successes of a big media company buying a tech company, this is one of the few. If Viacom went and bought this, is the perfect timing. It was simply, Pluto was essentially grab all the video that you see all over the internet that you can usually only find via someone sharing it on social media or a website you go to that's very video on demand. They gathered it all up and they programmed it like traditional television. So you have channels, you have programming 24 hours scheduled. They said, we're just going to create a free version of television that doesn't maybe have A-list content like you're going to find on your cable package that you're paying $230 a month for, but you're going to be getting almost as good content and you're going to pay zero. And so that, that fit that thesis that we're talking about right now. But of course, the one distinguishing factor is no lives. When we had deals with the NFL, with Major League Soccer, we had a lot of sports deals, but it's all for library stuff. It's all for archived content.
Not any of the live stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the jump to go from that to licensing first run live sports is so massive. It's not even, there's no question. We knew we were going to sell before we even started approaching that range. Like even there was a point at which the company was faced with either, okay, time to go raise $80 million and really go for a moonshot or go sell to a big company. But either would have worked, but it was like, either was a good option. But we weren't that far away from maybe licensing some pretty recently run cable shows, but we weren't even close to licensing sports.
Right.
And so that really is the distinguishing factor.
Got it. And with Pluto TV, and you said it's almost like its own, network essentially, right?
Sure. Well,
it's running all day.
It's its own.
What content are they running?
Good
on
stuff,
there to
man.
do it.
Good stuff. I mean, first of all, live news. So all the news stations, movie channels. You won't get movies from the 2010s, but you'll get all the best movies from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s.
And are they paying a licensing deal for those films?
They, at first we were doing just rev shares, and we, as I'm saying, we got some pretty good content on just a rev share. Just like, hey, let's see, you're already giving this stuff away. It's already available somewhere. Let's see what we can cook up here. And, we'll split, after some deductions, we'll split it. And then, as we got some more recent stuff, some higher profile studio films, you start to get into some licensing fees. But I didn't see many big multi-million-dollar licensing fees, and we got some really quality stuff. And that also, you've got, like Batman's still under Warner Brothers, but the James Bond movies are very unique in that they're owned by a private company, right? So you got to do a different deal with them. Or we do with some of the cable networks, pretty recent cable television lifestyle programming, like a lot of HGTV. We had all Bourdain's.
That shit still crushes,
dude. It does really
Every
well.
housewife in America watches it.
Absolutely.
And it's one thing when it's on. Like I'm not even pissed off about it. Where I'm like, all right, cool, man, HGTV. Like I'll get down on that. I'll get down on like $1 Million Listing on Bravo and all that other shit. And I'm fine with that. The food networks, man.
Yeah,
those goddamn things are a cash cow.
Absolutely, and you can build great brands off of them.
Yeah. As long as you have a good personality,
without a doubt. There. But hey, usually they won't be the ones. There's all those chefs out there trying to become media personalities. So they probably won't make it to that point unless they've been filtered a little bit for for the on camera, and everyone's got to fill it out. You got your Bobby Flays, you got your Guy Fieri's, so something for everybody.
Yeah. We get some sponsors who pay for this fucking show to be on the air. And then I want to ask you about Quibi after this, because that's been just a goddamn disaster. First and foremost, ghostbed.com/Drinkin Bros. 30% off if you were a member of the military, a first responder, a teacher, or you work in the government. They're giving you 30% off of everything in the entire store. Go to ghostbed.com/Drinkin Bros today. If you're a regular dumb civilian like myself, you can get 25% off everything. And if you order a mattress, you get 2 free pillows. As always, they got the 36-month pay-as-you-go program. No interest on that. So all the deals that I just mentioned are still applicable with those. Go to ghostbed.com/Drinkin Bros today and get on it. Next up, we got Strikeforceenergy.com. Strikeforce Energy is the premier energy drink in the space, in my opinion. Look, I've been drinking this shit for 4.5 years, so you know me. I'm all hyped up on this shit every goddamn day. 4 amazing flavors: grape, original, lemon, and orange. Tasty, tiny little 10 pouch. You squeeze it open and rip it into any liquid available, and you're good to go. Go to StrikeForceEnergy.com today. Promo code Revolution, 20% off. They ship everywhere in the entire world, and there's no carbs and sugars in it, so you're good to go for the quarantine. This is the worst I've looked throughout the goddamn quarantine. I'm going to be reals with you. Last but not least, Postmates. Postmates, kids. Look, you know them. You love them. That's all we use out here in Los Angeles. Dan just had something delivered by bike. He had fucking Postmates delivered by a bike in L.A. If you haven't seen the streets of Los Angeles recently, I would not do that if I were them. So go to Postmates. Support these guys because they're out there putting their lives on the line on these fucking bikes, riding through the homeless. Revolution is the promo code that'll give you $100 off in free delivery fees. All you have to do is go to the Postmates app, download it, type in the promo code Revolution, $100 off in free delivery fees. That's great. That's the only thing that jacks up the price there. It's the fucking delivery fees. Now you just order the food and congratulations, you get it for free. Well, the delivery fees at least. The food will be the same price. Revolution at Postmates. Let's talk about Quibi.
Yep.
Why? Why did they do this? Why did they go during the COVID? Why did they go strictly mobile? Why did they do any of it?
You know, the man is a legend in this town, but
Tell people
everyone
who
runs
the
out
man
of
is.
Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Yep.
And he's done amazing things. He was the right man. He was a revolutionary, during a prior era of media. And but I'm sorry, Jeffrey, that era's over, man. This was the last cry of the boomers. In that era, bigger work, scale work, throwing money at stuff worked, and they tried to recreate it in a democratized, more iterative environment, and it did not work. Sure, there were some conditional factors like COVID. Everyone thinks that maybe COVID would be a better environment to release Quibi in, but no, because Quibi was specifically constructed for people on the go.
Right.
And all of a sudden, nobody's on the go. No, nobody. But the whole you could
But
see.
it's mobile, right? And when you're out of content during a quarantine like we are today, one would think, hey, man, that's still an okay time to launch because you're just going to be fucking around on your phone anyways.
You'd think, but the other problem, it was too clustered. It was too saturated. Okay, look what Netflix did. They focused on one show, House of Cards. It drew an audience. It gained buzz, and then that kind of lit a fuse for the rest of their original content. It still does that. It's trying to create tentpole programming and draw a lot of attention to very few particular shows, Narcos, what have you, right? Quibi comes along, and I looked at some of their shows and I'm like, this is pretty fucking interesting.
Right.
But if you fucking go release them all at the same time, you don't allow any of them to build an audience. People have to discover stuff. Everything else is it gets too busy. And if you're going to go release all this content simultaneously, how do you allow anyone to navigate it, to go find shows, to create some buzz? The media, entertainment media was talking about House of Cards for a year before they launched any other original programming. The tech world, the tech environment, the digital world, you release, you iterate, you release, you iterate. You do it step by step, not this baby boomer 1990s media. Raise as much money as possible, hire the most expensive people as possible, and go scale and throw everything up against the wall. And that's what they did. It's almost like too perfect an allegory for the out-of-date baby boomer approach falling flat in an environment that does not accommodate it.
Yeah, I looked at some of their programming, and I'm no fan of Chrissy Teigen on the show. Everybody knows that. I fucking hate her.
It's the worst.
And John Legend is just a snooze fest to me. But she had a show where she was a judge. I tried to watch maybe 5 minutes of that.
Yeah,
it was only 10 minutes, and I couldn't get through 10 minutes, and it was only a 10-minute show. I thought that was a disaster. The rest of them, they tried to bring back Punk'd on there with Chance the Rapper and some other things. And I don't know. All of it just felt forced and weird. And it was not a surprise to me that it failed. I've got some friends of ours who are directing, or they were supposed to direct some new shit for them. And it already went dark. They just said, hey, we're pulling the production.
Well, it's just also, when you go raise $1.8 billion right off the bat, do you have any idea how successful you have to be to succeed? You don't want to set the bar that high for yourself, and that's what they did. you'd like to believe like, hey, if I create a $1.5 billion company, that's a success. Had they done that, which they didn't and will not,
Right.
they're still losing money.
Yeah.
Right. So like it's just, I don't, it's felt ill-conceived from the start. It's like, Jeffrey, if your thesis is that we need to produce more high-end, elaborate content, but in a structure that makes more sense for people on the go who are quote unquote consuming content in quick bites, i.e. Quibi. If that's your thesis, go do 5 shows and go raise $75 million. Don't go buy the most expensive offices and go hire everyone. Go do 5 shows and let's roll it out.
That was the old model. And that's what they used to do.
Yeah, but also,
now they don't do that anymore. So, but a lot of these old executives, and like, I sold a TV show to Sony, and it got pushed because of COVID. Everybody's familiar with that on the show. But it was one of those things where the conversations I kept having with these guys over and over again, everyone's still stuck in that old model of like, hey man, we can still get the huge budget, we can still do all the huge things and have the expenses and the lunches and all that shit. And it's like, man, that world is not working anymore. So if you can get it, congratulations. And that's what it felt like to me with them, where it was just like, hey man, this might be the last big deal we get like that. So why not just enjoy it, because fuck it, it's not our money anyways, and if it bombs, it bombs.
It is the last ride of the baby boomers, man.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman. Where'd that come from? Never run a content company before in her life. Like,
no,
of all the, it just it.
She was running for
governor. Did she run for president as well? I'm not sure.
She ran for president, yeah. Okay. But she was governor of...
no, she's running for governor of California, actually.
Yeah.
And I mean, much respect to Meg. Had a successful career. I mean, a lot of people disparage her performance at Hewlett Packard, but hey, she became the CEO. That's no easy task.
She's a fucking billionaire.
Yeah, she's great. She's got an incredible career. And then she wanted to hop on like redefining, video content with Jeffrey Katzenberg as her last hurrah. Just
why not? The Obamas did it. I mean, they got a podcast on Spotify. They signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Netflix to produce documentaries and contents. The Becoming was the first one that's behind the scenes look at Michelle Obama's book and all that other shit, which I watched. It's a softball piece where it kind of felt very PBS. But whatever, they're in the entertainment space, and Michelle Obama's now got this podcast that they're promoting everywhere, it seems like. It's one of those things where I think where every actor wants to become a rock star. I think every politician wants to become a movie producer or some form of personality, and
definitely
it doesn't always work out. Doesn't always work out. But speaking of behind the scenes with movie personalities and shit like that, I want to go hard Epstein with you here.
Okay. There's only one way.
Yeah, there is, right?
Yeah.
Good. So Ghislaine's arrested. Does she live out this term?
Yes. Yeah,
you think she does? Because right now they got it down for July 12th, 2021 for this trial to start.
Yeah.
You think she makes it all the way to July?
I think now that so many people are expecting her not to, that she's going to. I think that I hate to talk in these nebulous terms, but now that whatever forces are governing all of this stuff, now that everyone is looking at it and expecting her to get killed or to die in some freak accident, the storyline doesn't make it. That storyline is too obvious now.
Right.
Now they got to throw us a curveball. Now the simulation, whatever's out there, has to throw us a better story. I don't know how it's going to play out. Could be some revelations and taking down some important people, but maybe like a few sacrificial cows. Like throw out a couple. They're going to nail a couple, and then we'll save everybody else. Okay. But I think it's too obvious that she dies. Who
else is out there that we don't know about? Is there anybody insider-wise that who's out there that it's like, oh, that would be a shocker? For example, I'll tell you one that has popped up at a few dinner parties that I've been at where I was just like, what? Tom Hanks was one.
The Hanks thing is fucking weird, man. All right, the Hanks thing is not new. I've been hearing about this for a couple years. And, okay, let me just frame this for you in terms of the people that I'm in touch with.
Sure.
I have some very smart people who are deep in that corner of the internet. These are not kooks, man. These are, in fact, I'm, he'd probably be fine with me saying who it is, but I didn't ask him, so I'm not going to. But if one friend of mine who is a successful writer and producer in Hollywood, who even created a show, which if you think hard enough about it, you'll figure out which one it is, but is a show that documents something that was a conspiracy theory that ended up being true, that's on a cable network right now.
Okay.
He's into this stuff. He's been telling me about Tom Hanks for years. And I'm like, Tom Hanks? He's like, Tom Hanks, bro. He's like, all of them satanic. And then every once in a while.
So, dude, at this fucking dinner party I was at, we talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show. My wife and I said, hey, somebody at this fucking dinner, she was with me, but if somebody at this dinner was told me that like Colin Hanks has like these satanic tattoos on each shoulder representing whatever fucking weird sex cult this is.
Are you familiar with Chet Hanks?
Yes, of course. The rapper Chet Hanks. Yeah. Big fan of his work.
Yeah, who cares? The man is an artist. And I appreciate his art. A little weird that, your kids go Colin in one direction, Chet in the other direction. There were definitely more than a couple posts that, I don't want to be thrown for a loop that, because someone planted the seed in my mind, I'm looking for, I have a hammer and so I'm looking for a nail. Yeah. But some of his posts, a little weird, like showing like almost like a kid's sock.
If you roll through his Instagram, everybody has said, like, there's this, Reddit conspiracy that we're like, man, it's each time he gets a kid, that's what those pictures are. By the way, I have no idea. I definitely don't want to be sued by Tom Hanks. I have no idea if any of this is true. Yeah. This is just what I'm hearing.
We're just talking about the conspiracy theory. We're not talking about, we are not speaking to truth.
It's all a conspiracy at this point. Yeah. I have no idea, but it's super fascinating because I met him years and years ago. Mm-hmm. He was exactly like you hoped on television, and him and his wife and all that shit. So I did not get any of those vibes from him. I was floored when this conversation went on for a good half hour at this dinner party, and I was like, no fucking way.
Did they get to Spielberg? Blown. Did they get to Spielberg?
No.
A lot of them talk about Spielberg too.
Really?
That whatever the accusation, not the truth, whatever they're claiming that Hanks is into, that Spielberg's part of it too. They show some stuff, they move all kid-oriented movies, and I mean, a strange relationship with Drew Barrymore on E.T., but like, I don't know, that could just be the usual, you think about it like, all right, there's always, if you're in a business where you're dealing with children and you're having them act and be on screen, there's always going to be a couple things that if you looked at it might look a little weird.
Sure.
I don't quite, I don't write all of this off. But one thing I do kind of hear these people sometimes, these are smart people. Once again, these are smart, successful people. These are not kooks. I've heard enough times saying it's all coming down soon. It's all coming down soon.
That's what I keep hearing.
And I've been hearing it's like, something, if it's not come, it hasn't come down yet. Okay. Yeah. And some stuff has been incrementally released, but you guys are the boy who cried wolf, and I can't take you seriously at this point. I'm going to need more meat on the bone if I'm going to keep on listening to you here. Familiar with Isaac Cappy?
No.
Oh man. Okay.
Who's Isaac Cappy?
Isaac Cappy is kind of like a D-list Jesus Christ. He's like a D-list actor. Maybe 3-4 years ago, he starts going on some rants, some on-camera rants about all this stuff that he knows that, it's like Macaulay Culkin's a child molester, Hanks, Spielberg, all of it.
Who else is in that crew that would shock you?
I'm trying to remember some. It was definitely Culkin, he said. Definitely Hanks. Like, Hanks was a no-brainer. Another actor wasn't 90s child actor like Culkin, but listen, the content's out there, so if you want to go see who Isaac Cappy, aka PPY, was talking about, go check it out. He ended up having a super strange episode and jumping off a bridge. It was like him running around a bridge freeway with the shirt off, and maybe like a car was coming after him and he jumped to get away from the car. Yeah. It was all super fucking strange, bro. But the chatter around that, died down afterwards. You've got the Corey Feldman thing, which is another one of these boys who cried wolf, who keeps on saying he sounds credible when he's talking about it in these anonymous, vague terms, but then he keeps on saying, the big reveal is coming, the big reveal is coming. And the big reveal never comes.
It never comes, yeah.
So listen, if I'm going to hold myself up to the standards I would hold somebody else up to, I'm not going to believe that at this point.
Yeah, and in that documentary, I don't know what happened with it. It was supposed to be on pay-per-view, and then it wasn't on pay-per-view, and all that other shit. So,
and then some people say, well, he's controlled opposition. they're programming him to ruin the credibility of the movement that's trying to reveal it.
I actually believe Corey Feldman. Like
I do. On some level, I absolutely believe him.
I think during that period, especially the 80s, shit was wild anyways.
Yeah.
And him and all those guys, like, that's my best guess is most of that shit probably happened to him. And
yeah.
Corey Haim.
Yeah, and I mean, they're always speculating on who, molested Corey Haim on the set of Lucas, and then, Charlie Sheen was right there, and
I've heard that story as well.
I mean, you read the Lenny Dykstra Charlie Sheen expose?
No.
Oh my God, man, you're getting a lot of good stuff today.
Yeah, Lenny Dykstra,
All right,
the center fielder for the Phillies.
Okay, so you know that Charlie Sheen was a baseball. Yeah, it was a baseball obsessive.
He's still a baseball
for
obsessive,
sure.
Yeah.
A lot of his friends were baseball players. You know, who his best friend was for a long time? Todd Zeal.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Very close to Todd Zeal.
Yeah.
And listen, there's a lot of before the AIDS thing was revealed. There were a lot of rumors about Sheen, about videos with dudes, with transvestites.
I've talked about it on this show where there was a friend of ours who owns a large porn company, and we were in an airport, hungover as shit, flying back from Vegas, and I was like, "What are the ones you get that you can't release?" And he goes, "Dude, the ones on Sheen are," and he goes, "Because you feel bad." It was him like smoking crack in bed with like other dudes and shit. And
yeah.
And he goes, it's not even, you can't release it because it's not even fun.
Yeah.
Like you just feel sad.
Dark.
It's a drug addict. Yeah.
Sure. And so Dykstra, Dykstra have you been following Dykstra's?
Yeah. So he started commercial real estate. Or
he was okay. So
and he made like $500 million allegedly.
Oh, he claimed he did. Yeah.
It was fraud. It was all fraud, and then he went to prison. And
he's one of those guys lying about everything. Living way.
He was on 60 Minutes. You remember 60 Minutes?
Oh yeah.
And they were like, one of the most successful athletes.
Stockbroker guru. I was like, oh look, Lenny Dykstra ended up having a real nose for the ball in the stock market. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I was mostly a fraud. I mean, if not all a fraud. I have friends locally who ended up meeting Dykstra because they were baseball players and like had Dykstra asking to borrow $10,000 under shady circumstances. Like. Yeah. The total fraud. However, he became friends with Sheen. And so they got into there's some beef between them, and Dykstra started talking to the Hollywood Reporter, and he's like, Sheen's problem is that he's ashamed that he's gay, and he's like got all these, I've got all these videos seen all this stuff with him and men and transvestites, and it's a pretty revealing, I mean, once again, it's all Dykstra's claims, but you're like, holy shit, if this is true, like some wild stuff about Sheen.
Right.
So highly recommend you check that piece out. If you want to going back to Epstein, I mean, you've got the Corey Feldman thing and what he's talking about. Another thing that you may not, that people who aren't in LA may be unaware of, that once again is a little suspicious, but I have no conclusions about it. Are you familiar with a guy named Steve Bing?
Yes.
Okay.
He just recently killed himself.
He did. At least that's the claim.
Allegedly, right?
That's the claim. This one kind
jumped off of a 27th story.
Okay, so this building, it's called the 10,000 building.
Condo. I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there for a meeting, and like...
It's noted as the central hub of the kind of shady older single dudes with money.
Right.
Like it's like there's a Hall of Fame over there. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine who lives there, he actually had a photo of a dead body at the time. I'm like, holy shit, that's gnarly. And then later in the day when it was revealed as Bing, I like lost my shit.
Right.
Because like I never knew Bing. However, when I was in high school, I remember reading about this guy. He's like, oh, he's older. He was probably his late 30s at the time. I was in my late teens. Older, had money. Inherited a lot of money. He's around dating all these models. Impregnated Elizabeth Hurley. Oh man, that guy lives the life.
Yeah.
And then
he denied it.
What was that?
He denied that it was his kid.
It was his kid. Yeah.
Which is weird. It's Elizabeth Hurley. Like, hey,
I
man.
was like, I'd get the shirt made. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And then I tiptoed around some people I know. I became friendly with some people who knew him. Everyone spoke the world of him. Everyone said that some of these other guys, like we know that they're a little shady. But this guy, everyone said, was a super nice guy. I was actually supposed to meet him towards the end of March through some friends. Not that they arranged a play date between me and Bing, but like you were supposed to go to the thing, he was supposed to be there. He was a big Democratic donor.
Yeah.
Definitely in with Bill Clinton, with Ron Burkle.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it, but there were never any, once again, no one had a bad word to say about this guy. No one was ever accusing him of sleeping with 14-year-old girls.
Sure.
But he was friends with some people who dived in, people are accusing that of.
Yeah.
And then he, within the last month, jumps from this building and kills himself. And people are wondering, like, yeah, he was maybe one of those guys who ran the clock out on being single a little too long and got super, super lonely. And someone who lives at his building told me that he had been acting very strange the last month before his death, asking people to call him Mr. Black.
Ah.
Yeah. And
why?
I don't know, man. I don't know. And then another person I knew who knew him said, I don't think I buy this. He was such a private guy. If he was going to kill himself, there's no way he'd do it in a public way like that.
It makes sense because, look, I've been in that building before. Ironically, it was for to finance a movie.
Uh-huh.
And it was a rather large check. And it was great. It's from a woman, by the way. But either way, when you go there, if you jump off that fucking thing, you're right. It is very public.
Sure.
You were out in front of everyone at that point. Like,
Yep.
I'm surprised there wasn't more pictures floating around because as soon as he hit the ground, people would have come out. Like,
Yeah.
a body makes that loud of a noise, especially when it's
Crazy.
hurled off a fucking building.
Yeah.
So that whole thing seems strange to me. And back in the day, he used to throw these parties that were massive, and he used to he financed a ton of movies and everything else.
Yeah.
Huge donor to the Clintons. I don't know what's coming out or could possibly come out, but between that happening recently and then the judge yesterday in the Ghislaine case, who
Well, it's not really the Ghislaine case, though. I mean, it's
Well,
like
the Epstein,
Yeah, I mean, it's a civil suit around, a Citibank, I believe it was, Deutsche Bank, not disclosing some relationship with Epstein, so it's tangentially related. And then, I mean, it turns out that this one might be a red herring because the murderer, what was his name, like Roy Don Baker? I don't know.
it was the judge's husband and the kid, right?
Yeah, but okay, the killer's name was Roy Den Hollander, and it turns out that this guy's some like super loon who's been ranting on the internet for 10 years and filing all
so
these...
they caught him.
They didn't call. He killed
they got
himself.
the guy.
Oh, he killed himself.
Oh, I didn't hear that yet.
Oh, yeah, you gotta stay on top of this stuff, baby.
Well, shit.
Yeah.
Well, that story just broke 2 days ago. So when did he kill himself last night?
Okay, he killed himself the day before. It was within the last day or two. And it turns out is a guy named Roy Den Hollander, who's kind of one of these men's rights lunatics who's just ranting and filing lawsuits, civil rights lawsuits that are frivolous and get thrown out of court every 15 minutes. Dude's like 57.
Oh, shit.
Strange, right?
Yeah.
And I think he had some beef with this judge over some feminist. He had ranted about this judge before, some men's rights issue. So this one might be another strange simulation coincidence. But
it's the second time you've mentioned simulation. You think we're living in a sim world?
Man, it certainly seems like it. It's certainly.
I've had this conversation with my wife numerous times. We had a guy on the show who wrote the simulation hypothesis. His name was Rizwan Burke, and we had him on the show, and we talked about it. He made huge headlines for saying that he's an MIT professor, respected guy, and he said, "Look, man, there's a 70% chance, in my opinion, that this is a sim world that we're living in." Day by day, it keeps seeming. I'm willing to entertain anything. I'm not all in on the sim world, but I'm also saying I'm not against it either, because at this point, with this virus and all this shit, it almost seems like, hey man, what else could we put out there and see if people actually freaked out in this video game?
Pretty much. Someone posed an interesting question. What are the chances you think that the most impactful variable in the 2020 election has even happened yet?
I would say, because we gamble a lot here, mybookie.com, promo code Drinkin Bros will double your deposit. I would say 5%. I'm going to say it's 5%. It's so low that I think we're not even close to the crazy shit that's going to happen over the course of the next 3.5 months.
Yeah. I would, who knows what's going to happen.
5% is even being generous for me, where I'm like, maybe this is it. But I don't think so.
Yeah,
it just doesn't feel like it.
What's supposed to happen with debates?
Yeah,
like what's supposed, like these they're going to cart people out, or like, I don't know. Someone have a heart attack or in the middle of one. I mean, who the hell knows what's going to happen?
Is there something you've heard?
No. However, a couple of friends of mine who are some older Hollywood guys who've been there and done that and seen this and seen that. Right before, one of the reasons I was a little more not shocked by the coronavirus is we had breakfast in February, and we're sitting there, and they start speculating on stuff like, oh yeah, this will have, who knows, maybe Trump will, have a heart attack during the debate or this or that or whatnot. And I'm like, you really think this? And it's like, we don't know that this is going to happen, but we know something's going to happen, because there's no way that this phase of American life just casually strolls into the next one. There's no way. Yeah. There's no. This was February once again, so a lot we hadn't seen yet. But I'm like, you want? There's no way that we just have a nice normal election. Trump, neatly beats Biden, and he just runs out the next 4 years, and and then whatever comes after MAGA comes after MAGA. There's no way that was happening.
Sure.
And look what happened. Didn't happen.
Yeah, so the predictions I made a long time ago on the show, and I've been pretty goddamn good about it. We had Sean Spicer on Drinkin Bros as well, and we talked to him about the upcoming election. So my prediction a long time ago, like 7 months ago, was this. I said that the day that Biden is supposed to give his speech for the Democratic convention, I think Trump is going to swap out Pence with Nikki Haley because he's not getting the white mom vote in the suburbs. If he's looking at the polls, I know that's super left field, but it wouldn't matter to a lot of people if Pence was out of there. The guy's kind of been invisible anyways. And it just doesn't matter. And he can also say he put the first woman in there because Biden, that was Biden's thing, right? No matter what, I'm going to put a woman in there. I also said Biden was going to pick Elizabeth Warren back in the day. And everybody else is leaning towards Kamala Harris. I still think it holds true for Elizabeth Warren. And I went all in. My bookie allows you to bet on it. Okay. So their max bet was 500, and I went for it. Okay. It was, I think, 15-1 odds. So I mean, it's a massive payday. Sure. So, but I just don't think Kamala Harris is likable enough. You live in L.A. You know her in California. Yeah. Also, what she did to young black men as far as imprisoning them regarding like marijuana charges and all this other shit, like. You also already have California on lock, so it doesn't matter anyways. And I don't know who else is out there. The mayor of Atlanta, Tammy Duckworth is starting to come up.
Val Demings is a name you'll hear a lot.
Right.
I forget what territories from. Val Demings, I've been here tiptoeing around. So keep an eye on her. Kamala, it's weird, right? It's kind of a mindfuck because she's a prosecutor in Oakland in Northern California, which is generally super liberal and progressive oriented. However, in that era, it still was an approach towards law enforcement and prosecution that, in the current environment, is considered taboo. Right? So it's like she's the Oakland progressive prosecutor, but her past is checkered because of what she did what she did in her position as prosecutor. It's strange. It's tough. And, she didn't turn out to be a great campaigner. I mean, let's be honest, her campaign and Warren's too are fucking embarrassments. They both face planted. Warren, I think, found something that worked for a minute and then it just plummeted. So I don't know. It's like, does he really want to choose one of these two women who have shown themselves not to be that popular, or does he want to just choose the safest bet possible that fits the demographic promise that he made and just kind of chills and doesn't carry the baggage that these two women who face planted on the national stage carry? I'm leaning more towards him doing that.
So who you got in that one?
It's either Demings, Duckworth, or the Atlanta mayor. One of those three.
Oh, that's Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Yeah.
Man, that'd be tough. I don't think she has enough of anything yet.
I don't either, but here's the thing.
The coronavirus.
The guy boxed himself in. He already said he had to do it. There's only so many choices.
But he didn't say a woman of color yet. So
he's been kind of tiptoeing.
Look, I agree with you.
Yeah,
if he doesn't, I think he's fucked. But I think I don't know if he's fucked anyways. Do you believe any of these polls that are out there?
I believe enough of them because it's not just about believing the polls. It's also about believing the direction of the polls. So like if 4 months ago they're telling me Trump is down by 5, okay, I can factor in my margin of error. But if Trump goes down 5 to down 11, I'm like, okay, maybe it wasn't that pronounced of a shift, but I do believe that's the direction it went.
So do you think Biden's going to win?
Gun to my head, yes. But I do not think it's over by any stretch. If it was today, he would win.
Maybe. It's strange. His strategy throughout this entire process, if you want to call it a strategy, because I don't know if it is or isn't.
I'll tell you exactly.
About hiding and not going on camera whatsoever. It could be because of the dimension is people are saying, hey, man, let Trump shoot himself in the foot with all this shit. And then,
absolutely, that's what it is.
And that's it. And keep hiding. Or, hey, man, we definitely don't want you on camera because you're making too many gaffes.
Listen, it's both clearly, but I mean, they both synchronize, right? Both of those that approach. No, I'm going to go ahead and say, everyone wants to just ignore that Joe Biden destroyed everyone in the Democratic primary. Everyone wants to just pretend that this is just some coincidence that's happening.
But if he didn't get bought out, essentially, because look, they bought out Buttigieg.
What? But he was beating all of them.
He was not beating Bernie Sanders.
Yes, he was.
Bernie
he
Sanders
was killing him.
Bernie Sanders would have won the.
Absolutely not.
It was already 4 states to 1.
Where are you getting this from?
It was already it was 4-0 Bernie Sanders.
No, it was because
Buttigieg won a state. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, it was. There was only 4 states, and there were already ones that he knew that Sanders knew he had to win because there were states that he was already up in. Whoa, I gotta send you some stuff on this. No, Joe Biden crushed them all.
Out before the.
But that doesn't matter. He crushed them.
Before Super Tuesday. They got out Buttigieg, Klobuchar.
Yes, you know why? Because they couldn't win. They couldn't beat him.
Right, but all of those votes would have been divided, and Bernie Sanders still would have had the delegate lead.
No, it doesn't matter. Looking at what happened when it went head to head, he destroyed him.
But it to get to head was the only way that he could.
But it doesn't matter. But that's what happened head to head is a reflection of where the voters were at.
But that's what the Democratic Party decided as a team, saying, "Hey, man, we definitely don't want Bernie in there because this is the way this is headed."
But that's fine. It doesn't matter when it was put. Here are all the voters. Here are their 2 choices. More of them went to Joe Biden.
But it should have been wide open of hey, man, because look, they were
who?
all pulling votes pretty equally.
But says who that there needs to be 6 choices? There were 2 choices, and a whole lot more people voted for Biden
because the Democratic Party made it that way.
But who cares? It doesn't matter. If they present the choices and the voters choose.
That early in the primary, it's never been just down to 2 that early.
Okay, first of all, it was back in the day, just not in the last couple cycles. But I don't see where there's this thing that you have to have 6, 7 choices. There
you
were
don't.
2.
But they eliminated it real quick to make sure that you didn't have any choices.
Of course,
whatsoever.
this happens all the time in terms of people who know they're not going to win consolidating votes.
Typically towards the end, not towards the beginning.
Fair enough. This was a more high, volatile, highly charged election. But regardless, at some point, people have to think maybe Joe Biden's handlers, because obviously it's his handlers, maybe they're not that dumb. Maybe they know what they're doing in this Weekend at Bernie's thing. Because I'll tell you. His Twitter feed is exactly what I told. If I was saying, if you're a Democrat and you want to defeat Donald Trump, this is what you do. Stop shrieking like freaking idiots about white nationalism and this and that and fascism and all this, and stop being resistance freaking 2-year-olds. Just say calmly, this is why Donald Trump's bad at the job of being president. Here's why we will be better. And that's Joe Biden's Twitter. That's his Twitter approach right now. None of this, not resistance, crazy, emotional. He's just here's what's going on. It's very calm. It's very playing it safe. And I'm sorry, it's definitely work. Whether or not he wins, it's definitely working better than the alternative would be working. Because the people who took the alternative approach all fucked up. Okay?
I think Bernie would have won, actually.
What?
I think Bernie was built for a moment like this. With what's going on, I think he would have been in the streets protesting.
I am going to send you a very well documented piece, and this is done by a Bernie Sanders supporter named Michael Tracy, who's nobody talks shit on the internet better than this guy. He's a Bernie Sanders supporter, and he will run down all the ways in which Bernie Sanders, based on pure performance, did not reach his potential or the expectations this year, both in terms of blue-collar workers in the Midwest, in terms of the youth vote and the youth turnout, and that all the excuse that he believes, and this, once again, Bernie Sanders supporter, all the excuses that were made in 2016 for him cannot be made this year, and Biden simply beat him.
Oof. That one I got to disagree on. Again,
okay.
Go back to Super Tuesday. Everybody dropped out on Sunday night for a reason. They were all forced out, and they're all going to get cabinet positions if he wins. Do you think he does win in November? And
Joe Biden?
Are you voting for him?
I'm not. I'm not voting, and luckily I live in California, so it doesn't matter. I know what the direction.
Why don't you vote?
what the fuck am I going to do? California, I know which direction it's going. I don't feel good about either. I don't feel good about either side. You know, Trump, I mean, I could sit here for the next hour and a half and roll out my, multi-dimensional thoughts on Donald Trump, but there's some things that he's done that in the, his personal conduct is not something that I feel comfortable really supporting. Joe Biden, I think is pretty much just like a Trojan, as Pence described, a Trojan horse for woke nonsense. And that, while if Joe Biden governed the country as his Twitter feed reflects right now, I could live with it. I just don't think that would happen. I think that he's pretty much going to he's going to throw a bunch of bones to, super left-wing radical senators and Congress people in his cabinet, and they're just going to steamroll him. And so I don't really feel at home with either option. So, I mean, listen, maybe I will vote. Maybe something's going to change over the next 4 months. Once again, one, neither direction that I vote is going to matter in California. And two, I don't feel good about I'm politically homeless.
Gotcha.
I am a member of the politically homeless right now.
Well, this is the perfect state to be homeless in.
You'll have a lot. You'll misery loves company.
Yeah, Matt Bilinsky, you're a fascinating guy, man, and I
Thanks, bro.
enjoy your feed. A mutual friend of ours was the one who turned me on to you. You seem to have a lot of insider information on Hollywood and politics before others are getting it. Tell everybody where they can find you out on social media.
For sure, Twitter, Instagram is just Matt Bilinsky. That's MattBinsky. Where most of my content is. Also, I've been doing a series of interviews that thus far have been on Instagram Live initially, but then translated to YouTube. My YouTube channel. Damn, did I get that custom URL yet? If you go YouTube search Bilinsky News Network, just to describe it, I've been sitting around trying to figure out a name for a podcast for about 7 years.
I've got the name for you, by the way.
Do you? Okay.
I think it should be called the Bilinsky Blitz.
The Bilinsky Blitz.
I talked to Xander about it, and I think because of what you do, and how good at you are in finding these niche stories before everybody else does, I think if you went Monday through Friday and did about a 35-minute podcast, blasting through the stories in a real fashion, in the same way that Nikki Fink used to do at Deadline, it would be endlessly fascinating. And the Penske Group owns now Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, and Variety. So they're not going to have any fresh original voices. I think that could be your space. Okay. Because it seems like you're not afraid to jump into certain celebrities and topics and everything else. Therefore, that is a niche that needs to be filled right now. Okay. And that is my recommendation to you.
I appreciate that. I'm definitely, hey, listen, I'm just getting started on the strategy thing. So someone who's done it and filled that space and succeeded at it, love your and appreciate your input, and look forward to seeing where we can take it.
I think it would crush. It would crush.
All right, let's put the
for
plan.
Matt Bilinsky, I'm Ross Patterson. This is The Revolution. Subscribe to YouTube. We're under the Drinkin Bros podcast network. In there, all of our media shows are as well. And go to iTunes and give us a 5-star and a quick review. It helps scoot us on up the charts. We will be back with Jessie Wiseman tomorrow, assuming she is alive, live from Hollywood. Good afternoon, everyone.